Okay. Um, so so let's continue now. Well, I don't know why. Okay. So we'll continue now over here in Masechta Moed Katan. We're up to in Gemara over here on 12b, Yud Beis Omid Beis. We're up to the Mishnah. So we'll do the Mishnah. Continuing with the laws of Choil HaMoed. Says the Mishnah, Machnis Odom Peiroisov Mipnei Haganovim. A person has fruits in his yard or in his front porch. He has a bunch of fruit, and he's afraid if he leaves it over there, doesn't seem like just a bag of fruit or something like that. It seems like maybe he cut down the apples of his trees or the grapes or something, and he's afraid to leave it over there because people might steal it. So the Mishnah says, Machnis Odom Peiroisov Mipnei Haganovim. One, a person is permitted to bring in his fruits because from fear of the thieves. Further, so this is also what's known in general as a davar ha'avud. Something that would be lost is permitted to be done on Chol HaMoed. Another thing the person can do on Chol HaMoed, the Mishnah says, V'shoyle pishtonoi min hamishra. He can also bring up the flax from its soak. I guess when they cut the flax from the ground, they used to make it soft. The way they used to soften it, they used to have like a pit of water. They call it a mishra soak, and it sits there. But there's only a certain amount that the flax can sit inside of the water, but otherwise it gets lost. So the person is permitted to bring up his flax from this soak, from the soaking, bishvil shaloi toivad, so that it's not lost. However, he puts a stipulation. Ubilvad shaloi kaven es malachte b'moyed. The condition is that he shouldn't intend to do the work on the Yom Tov, which means if he happens to have the flax needs to get up, happens to be on Yom Tov, and he happens to have the fruit there on Chol HaMoed, then he can bring it in. However, don't leave the job for Chol HaMoed. You may think, Chol HaMoed, there's no work, there's more time. Maybe you're not going to do the other work. So he says, "Ubilvad shelo yikaven es malachte b'moyed." The condition is you should not intend to do the work during the Chol HaMoed. Shelo yikaven malachte b'moyed, says Rashi. Why would he? Sheyesh lepnai bishar yemeis hashana, because he has time on the rest of the year, meaning he can do it. Why are you doing it on Yom Tov? Just why are you doing a Chol HaMoed? Why did you do it early? You have time. But he leaves it for the Yom Tov. So because that's not allowed. And therefore, the Mishnah says, so all of these cases that we mentioned, if they did have in mind that they want to leave it for the Yom Tov, Yovdu, they should be lost, meaning, Rashi says, Sha'osur lehanes mehen, it is prohibited to benefit, whether it's the fruit, whether it's the flax, you cannot benefit since you had the opportunity to do it before Yom Tov, and you left it for Yom Tov. Gemara. Gemara brings from a Braise. Tana, we learned in a Braise. Even though we allowed you to bring in the fruit to the house, but the condition is you should bring it in quietly into the house. Don't make it into a public display that you are loading in the fruit into the house or taking up the soaked from the Mishnah. Keep it quiet because that's not honorable for Yom Tov to see on Chol HaMoed that you're doing these kinds of work. And the Gemara relates a story that Rabbi Yosef Havele Kishuri. Rabbi Yosef had beams. He had beams. And Ayilinu B'Yimama. He brought him in, those beams, to the house, to the shed, where he brought him in during the daytime. Omar le Abaye says to Abaye, why are you doing it in the daytime? You're making a public display of bringing in the beams. But Tanya, didn't we learn in the Braise, Ubilvad, Sheyachnisem Bitsina B'Teich Beisai, that the condition that the Braise said that we just learned was that you do it quietly in your house, not during the daytime. That's not appropriate, he thought, to bring it in during the daytime. That would be too much publicity. Amar lei. So Rabbi Yosef said to him, Sino dehani yimamu. Actually doing it in a quiet way for these beams is specifically during the daytime. Because if you do it at nighttime, you need more help, you need more light. It's going to be a bigger noise to do it in the nighttime, and it's to do it quietly. The daytime is better. Amar lei. So he said to him, Sino dahani, quiet of these beams is yimamahu, is the daytime. Says Rashi, Sino didhu yimamahu. This hiding is the daytime. And Rashi says, Afilu balaylo ki yimamadami. He doesn't say, he says that, he doesn't say that it's quieter during the day, but basically what he is saying, I'm seeing the Rashi, that afilu belaylo ki yimamadami. That even if you do it at nighttime, it's still like doing it in the daytime. So and it's not, he has to bring him in. So he has a choice. He can bring it in at nighttime or he can bring it in the daytime. He says bringing in at the daytime is no more public display than is bringing him, than bringing out the nighttime. So since he needs to bring them in, and we could bring it at nighttime, so we nami he can also bring it at the daytime. And the reason is, Kivan del Belayla Boyu Gabri, you say that. During the nighttime, you need additional people. Uboyi Meduchre de Nura, and you need flames. Meduchre de Nura means big lights of fire. Meduchre de Nura says avukus, flames of fire. Avshamilsa. So the thing would become public. So therefore, it's okay to do it at the daytime. Again, not like I said before, there is less noise in the daytime than the nighttime, but it's equally noisy at nighttime. So therefore, it's okay to do it at the daytime. Because we allow him to do it is a hefsid. So we allow him to do it so he can do it in the daytime as well. So now, the next thing the Gemara says, that he can bring up the flax from the soak on Chalamoy. And what did we say? If he does it intentionally, then he can't use it. So the question is, what happens about his children? If, let's say, he was wrong, he intended to do the work during the daytime, during Chalamoyed, he left it for Chalamoyed, so we say that it's Asur Ba'anoah. But what about if he dies? Are his children permitted to use it or not? Let's see what the Gemara asks. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asks of the Rabbi Zera, he had intent to do the malacha during the festival, but then he dies. Mahu, what is the status? What is the din? Sheyiknesu bonov achrav. Should we punish his children that follow him, who inherit him, and saying, hey, your father did something wrong. He did the work on Chalamoyed, so it's prohibited. You can't use it either. Or we only punish the father, but the children we don't punish. Rashi explains. Ma'u sheyiknesu bonov achrav. What is the din? Shall we punish the children that follow? Which means lebonov nami yehei asur oisa melacha. That work should be prohibited also for his sons. The kivan malachte b'moyed. Since he had directed, he specifically did the job on Chalamoyed. Dinhu sheyu asurin. The halacha should be that it should be prohibited to benefit from this work, just like the time when your father was alive. When the father was alive, the father would not be allowed to benefit from the work that he did in Chalamoyed, that he left for Chalamoyed. Same thing is the children. And the Gemara explains further. The Gemara is going to say different cases in which we say that we are not allowed to. We don't punish the children. Sometimes we find that we do punish the children. And the question is here, are the children punished or not? The Gemara says like this. If you will find to say, we'll turn the page. On Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. The din is a firstborn, which is a bechoir. You have to bring on it goes to the kohen, but you bring it. Today, we don't have a mizbeach. So what do you do with a bechoir? Nothing. You can't do anything. You can't. You have to wait till he gets a mum, till he gets a blemish. Once he gets a blemish, then the kohen can use it. So here, the kohen goes ahead and he makes on the ear a blemish so that he can get to use the bechoir. So he doesn't have to offer it. So the Gemara asks, the Gemara says, Sora or Bechoir. If he cut the ear of a firstborn, over there, Konsu B'noi Acharav. Over there, they did punish the son after him, that even the son cannot use that Bechoir, because the father went, he made a blemish, so we can't use it also. It reminds me of our president that got a blemish on his ear. Saram oizen b'choir sekt Rashi. Chotach Ma'oznoi me'at kidei sheyehei balmum. If he intentionally cut part of his ear so that he is now blemished, v'yehei muterloi, and then he will be permitted to the kohen. And he says, but v'osur lasis kain, you're not allowed to do it because the pasuk says mishum mom lo yiyaboy. There shall be no mum. What it means to say is koloimar lo tatil boy mum. That means don't place a mum in it. So there is a prohibition against placing a mum in the bechoir. But v'im hitil by mum, if he did place the mum, konsu rabbanon, the rabbanon penalized him. The loyenem imenu, he should not benefit from the bechoir. V'im meis, and what happens if he dies? Ein bonov neni mimenu, his sons will not benefit from the bechoir. So, even if you say that, so you see that the children are punished, but that case is different. Why? Because over there he violated a Torah commandment. Mishum the Isura Deraisa. That is a prohibition of the Torah. Because the Torah says not to blemish the ear or make a mum in a bechoir. You did it, so we punish also the son. Rashi, Mishum the Isura Deraisa. Aval high, but in our case, in the case when the person did malacha intentionally on chalamoyed, aval high di kiva malachtim b'moyed, but this person that had intention, he made sure he directed that the work should be done during the Yom Tov. The lav is surah deraisahu. This is not a Torah prohibition. Why? If you don't intend to do it, you can do it. So who doesn't allow you to use it? Who says that using it is also the rabbis? Because there is really no prohibition of the Torah, because you're allowed to do it. The only problem is because you intended to do it in Chalamoid instead of doing it in the weekday. But if you didn't have in mind, it just happened to be Chalamoid, then you can go ahead and do it. That means it's a penalty of the Rabbanan. So in this case, maybe they don't penalize his son. And then there's another situation. One is not permitted, a Jewish person who has a slave is not permitted to sell his slave. A Goyish slave is not permitted because a Goyish slave that works for a Yid becomes obligated in some of the mitzvahs. Like a woman, he's obligated in mitzvahs. You're not allowed to sell to a goy because then he won't be able to do the mitzvahs that he's already obligated. So the difference is like the din is like this. So if you're going to even find to say that in a case where a person sells his slave to a goy, so what do the Chachamim say? That he goes free. So the halacha is that slave goes free. So what happens? Over there, we also punish the son, and the slave goes free. The son cannot inherit and take the son. But what does it mean? He sold him to a goy. So Rashi explained. What happened is like this. Machar of the late kechavim. Konsu Rabbanon, over there the Rabbanon punished him. V'yetzel lechedus. And he goes out free. What does it mean he goes free? The I barach min ha'ovid kechavim. If he runs away from the goy, so he comes back home, comes back to the Jew, Ein Yisrael yochel l'koifei l'avedosei. The Yid cannot force him to go ahead and to do his work. So the imeis, and even if the master dies, ein bon of yichayim l'koifei, the sons can also not force the slave when he comes back. Meaning that the penalty over there sticks to the son, even in this case. But there is a reason in this case why that would be. Mishum dechol yoimo mafkilei mitzvahs. Because every day that he's by the goy, you take him out, you don't let him do mitzvahs. And therefore you did a terrible thing by selling him to the goy. Because it's not a one-time thing that you violated the Torah, but you have put the slave in a way that he's every day violating. So that's a big violation. So therefore, we're not going to let the son have him either. Again, Choye Mafkalim mitzvahs. Zok Rashi, the Choye Mafkalim mitzvahs. The Kol Zman Shehu Birshus Ha'ovid Kechovim Eino Osik b'mitzvahs, because for as long he's in the domain of the Ovid Kechovim, he's not doing mitzvahs. The question is, Hocha Mai. What is the din in our case? Hocha Mai. In our case, he wanted to do the work on Cholamoyed. He left it for Cholamoyed. And the Chachamim said it's Osur Ba'anoah. Can't benefit. What happens to the son? Could he benefit? Hocha Mai. So what's the question? Gavra konis rabbanon. Did the rabbis punish the man? He was punished. Well, the person is not here anymore. He's dead. Zok Rashi. Gavra diniskaben lasis malacha konis rabbanon. Shaloi lehonis menu. Is it the person that intended to do the work, whom the rabbanon punished not to benefit from it? Or Dilmor, perhaps. Maybe the rabbi is punished, not the person, but the monetary. He said this thing is not permitted by Hanoah. Well, he said that thing is still around. The rabbis put the punishment on the object, basically, on the fruits that he brought in. Even the sons shall not be able to benefit from him. So this is the question he asked him. Amaloi, so he answered him. He said, Tinitua, we learned this. This is already a Mishnah. We learned it in a Mishnah. It says that Soda Sheniskafzo Bishvis. A field that has been thorned out on Shvi. So this first situation that the Mishnah says over there, we're talking about that the field, the thorns, I guess, the bad bushes, you're not allowed to work the field on the 7th year on Shvis. But over there, the koitzim, the katan, the thorns have been removed. Some of the bad has been removed. But they weren't done by the person in a way of the work. I'm not sure exactly. It says they were taken. It means he didn't do the job. They were done on their own, basically. I'm not sure how. Then tizora lemoitzo yishvis. Then you can go and sow it after the 7th day, even though now the field has been prepared for sowing it. That's okay. But if it improves through your act, That's called netaiva. Uh, netaiva means he made it better. He fertilized it. He fertilized it like he had the load of all of the animals left over. He put it into a wagon, and then he runs the wagon over the field, and the thing dumps out on its own, and it drops and it fertilizes the field. That's called netaiva. Rashi says netaiva, which means he was involved, which means netaiva nezablo. He made it better by he fertilized it. He he carried the zevel, the fertilizer, in wagons and in loads. That's one way. There's another way of doing it, having the animal do their things directly, not on the wagon, but they do it directly on the field. That's called a nedaira. Nedaira means al yidei dir behema, by the excrement, the left of the behema. And that's not allowed to do on Shvis. Because Rashi says, Lizabla avodas karkai. To fertilize it, that's considered work for the ground. So Rashi adds, Kol hani midrabonaninu. There is no direct. This fertilizing, what he's doing it and the way he's doing it, is not a Torah prohibition. It's only a rabbinic prohibition. And still we say, V'afo pikein konsu loitizra l'motzoi shvis. Even though it's from rabbis, but they punished it. They said you cannot sow it, the ground after shvis, because you're benefiting from the improvement that was taking place that the rabbis told you not to do. So therefore, loy tizora l'motzoi shvis. You can't sow after shvis the ground. If it's this kapsa by shvis by itself, then you can do it motzoi shvis. But if you purposely made it better and you had the fertilizer directly on it, it's prohibited. And loy tizora l'motzoi shvis. Then after shvis, you're not allowed to sow. So then, Omar Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina. So Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina goes and adds to that statement that Naktinon Heitivo Umeis Benoi Zoira. That we know that the halacha is that when you improve the field, what he did, what he wasn't supposed to, and then he dies, the son is going to be allowed to sow it. In other words, we're not going to stretch the punishment also to the son.
What would be the option that the field would have?
Maybe leave it for a year, I was thinking,
year.
And then wait for 1 year before you do it. Or, usually I haven't looked up the specific halacha, but usually we have, when you benefit from something you're not allowed to, you have to wait for as long so you don't benefit. So, I don't know, maybe if he puts in new fertilizer, or maybe if he waits some time on the effect. I mean, how long does he have to wait to make up for what he did wrong? I mean, what does it take? That's a good question. I don't know. You have to look it up. I doubt it that you have to wait the whole year. Or maybe he has to put new. The bottom line is, we punish him not to benefit from that fertilizer, I guess, so not to do it again, or that's the punishment, not to benefit from something that the rabbis prohibited. But nevertheless, what do we see from here? Almo, the day, konsurabonon, the breile konsurabonon. So we see that to the father, the rabbis punished, but the son they didn't punish. Librela Konsurabona. We see in that case. Hachinami, same thing in our case. The day Konsurabonon, Librela Konsurabonon. In our case, it's the same as true. They only punish the father because he did the work on Cholamoyed, but the son, the Rabbanon, did not punish. Omar Abaye, further there's Abaye Naktinon, we hold the halacha is that Tima Taharesov Vames. Now, sometimes a person can do damage to another person, and it's not a damage that you can tell, because let's say his friend has pure food that is not touched an insect, and you bring an insect and you touch a pure uh, uh, grain, let's say, and now that food is worth less because it's tummy. Not everybody can eat it. Some people only eat toir. But if you look at the grain, you can't see, nothing happens. The same grain like before. You just touched it with an insect, and you caused the grain to become tummy. So technically, you don't have to pay because it's called a damage that you can't tell. You did damage that you can't tell. It's called a hezek she'ein nikar. A damage that you can't tell is really not called a damage. If you don't see the damage there, it's not called a damage. So what happens if he dies? So because he dies now, do the children have to pay or not? So they punish the person himself who's done that he has to pay. But now Vomeis, he dies, he says, the son was not punished and doesn't have to pay. Why? My timer, what's the reason? Hezek she'enei nikar l'shmei hezek. It's a damage that is not recognizable. It's not considered a damage. Hezek she'enei nikar hu da'beinehu, because it's still there, same grain. And therefore we say, Lididei konsu rabbonon. They punished him, the rabbis punished the son, the father, the one who did it. But librei lekonsu rabbonon. The rabbonon did not punish the son. So the rabbis, it says in the Pasuk, Yubsu Oves Albonim, sons don't die for the father's sins, but it means something else over there in the Pasuk. But the bottom line is that the punishment only extends to the fathers, it doesn't extend to the son. I just want to spend a few minutes. We'll start the Mishnah next week in the next Mishnah. And I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about Yud Beis Tammuz, which is Thursday, which is the day of redemption of the previous Rebbe. And the previous Rebbe was incarcerated, and originally he was condemned for the penalty. They wanted to do the death penalty, and then eventually it was exchanged for 3 years into exile. And then that was also, he was freed. On the 12th day of Tammuz, he was freed. It took till the 13th of Tammuz that it was a holiday, so they couldn't give him the notice. So the 12th and 13th of Tammuz are celebrated as the days of freedom of the previous Rebbe from freedom. And the previous Rebbe writes, this is not only his holiday that he personally was freed from prison, but this is really the holiday of all Jewish people. And he goes as far, even somebody who's just is called Jewish, which means he's not practicing or he's not involved in anything Jewish. He's just a Jew. Why? Because those were the people that the Rebbe fought for. the Rebbe was living in a time in which it was very dangerous and very difficult to observe Torah and mitzvahs. It was going against the government who forbade this. And like in the times of the Talmud that we read, that the great rabbis, uh, despite the decrees, they defied the government and they went and they continued to teaching Torah. That's what the previous Rebbe did, and he did it every day. And of course, that got him into trouble. But he did not yield. He did not let them break his spirit. He did not let them break his resolve. There's a whole write-up from the Rebbe himself about all of the surahs he went through while he was incarcerated. But the one thing he stood strong by, he never gave in to them. And he said that he will consider them to be nothing. He gave them no uh, no recognition at all. I mean, and they actually hurt him. They tortured him. They hurt him, and he suffered to the end of his life. Some of the ailments that he had was due to the treatment that he got during his incarceration. But yet he stayed strong. One of the popular stories is, I've said it many times, but it has a very strong moral. He was faced against one of the investigators over there, and he wouldn't respond to him. He demanded to give him his tefillin. He says that they need to do this, and the guys, they said to him, you know who you are? You're not in the shul over here. You're in the KGB over here. You got to watch how you're talking and the way you're talking. And he says to them, I'm in a place which is not obligated in a mezuzah, as we know, a restroom and things like that, that's where I am. But the guy picked up his revolver that was laying on the desk, and he threatened the Rebbe. He says, you're not going to talk. He says, I'll shoot you right here. And he sort of said mockingly to the Rebbe, this toy, has opened the mouth of many mute people. People start to talk when they see this toy. And the Rebbe says only the people that have more than one God, but only one world, are scared of this toy. But a person who has only one God and two worlds, I'm not afraid of your toy, and so on and so forth. The Rebbe was strong, and at the end of the day, they were forced to let the Rebbe go. Now, the Rebbe says this was an open miracle. Nobody got out. It was a miracle, but it was dressed in nature. I mean, it wasn't like the manna coming from the heaven or the splitting of the sea, which was totally not explainable. There was intervention. The American government, there was actually Boston, there were some lawyers from Boston who had influence in the State Department. The American government was involved, and many, many other people putting in effort on behalf of the previous Rebbe. And in the end, it paid off. But it was a miracle. Nevertheless, everybody recognized that it was an outstanding miracle. And in a way, it was a miracle within nature, that nature itself had to give in and say that this is miraculous. And eventually the Rebbe left the Soviet Union. He came to the free world and eventually came to America. And the last 10 years of the Rebbe's life, the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, worked through the United States, in the United States, and then the Rebbe continued the work of his father-in-law. But the Rebbe points out that the previous Rebbe's mission was to strengthen Yiddishkeit. He gave over his life for it, and the fact that when he was in prison, that he couldn't continue his work, that caused him a lot of distress because he wanted to do his work. And the Rebbe points out, that he wasn't looking to fight the government. He wasn't looking, giving up your life for Hashem is a very high madrega. special people give up their life for Hashem, die in Kiddush Hashem. You know, Rabbi Akiva, the story, he said, I have an opportunity to show Hashem my love, that ready to give up my life for him. Of course, I'm going to do it. But some people just, they're concentrating on doing what they need to do. They need to spread Yiddishkeit, strengthen Yiddishkeit, and that is all that they're doing. And if they're not allowed to do that, or they can't do it, they get very distressed about it. It costs them a lot of pain. And the previous Rebbe knew how important he is to the Jewish community, how much they needed, how much he was needed, that were there to be there for them, for all the people. So that cost him a tremendous amount of distress. But at the end of the day, that incarceration itself and the message and the encouragement that a lot of people received, that was part of his service to Hashem. It turns out that itself was the tremendous lesson, that all the goyim that remained opponents, they didn't change their ways. They had to free him, and the Hasidim saw all this, and they got encouragement. They continued to live their lives based on the way the previous Rebbe instructed them, and they were teaching their children, and continued to keep the spark aflame. And firsthand, my father, may rest in peace, Alav Shalom, he was also one of those people. But they were after the previous Rebbe left in 1928, or it was the end of 27, I'm not sure, maybe the end of 27, 28. He remained there. They remained there. My parents came out after the Second War in 1945, but they left. They stayed there, and they kept up the work of the previous Rebbe. They made secret yeshivas and secret schools and secret minyanim and mikvahs and everything. They did it, but they had to do it in hiding. Today, you have, all the Russian communities, the fact that they have some Yiddishkeit over there is due to the work that was implanted in those days. So, Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Gimel Tammuz is a day of celebration, a day of freedom. And hopefully we'll all experience our own personal freedoms. And we'll leave it at this, hopefully till next week. Same time, same station. We hear only good news and only blessings to all of us and our families. Thanks for joining.
Fantastic. And happy birthday, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.